Hello. How y'all doing? I always use this mug in all of the things that I do. I'm just gonna leave this running for a few before I start because I want to give people the opportunity to join in. So, as I make some notes of things I'm going to talk about. Hi, whoever just tuned in. Can't see who it is, but okay. Howdy, whoever else added in there. I don't think it will show me. Hey, John. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just start chatting away, and then hopefully people will jump in as we continue. So hello, and thanks for joining me again. I'm going to be talking a lot today about healing and trance healing in particular, because it's something that I have really began to enjoy regarding, another expression and form of mediumship. So within mediumship, we work with something called the power, and that's the power of the other world, the power of the spirit, but it's also the power that's within us. And so what we do with this power is we offer that moment to the other world, and whatever it is they're able to develop or create, that brings forward our spiritual gifts. So the gifts that we have within us, the potentials for what is possible with that power. And for some people, that gift is the gift of healing. I'm sure you can think of plenty of examples in any kind of religion where there's spirit healers, there's people laying on of hands, there's people who just can think and imagine and end up healing, having these healing things. Now, whether those things are placebo effect or whether that is something really is spiritually impacted is going to be up to each person as far as the evidence. I think it's really important to always look at the evidence and what is possible, because healing to me is the highest form of mediumship. The fact that there's any reason why any of us can impact the physical well-being of anyone else is quite spectacular, and I really find that it's one of the most magical, hey Megan, it's one of the most magical forms of mediumship, because it's one thing to bring forward a message from the other world, and it takes some level of what's it called, faith or something, to first accept that spirit people exist, right? But with healing, that is something that every single person on this earth at some point is going to require, is going to need. And so the fact that we're even able to do that is quite magical, and it also, I think, for a lot of people, proves that there's something more than what our materialistic or scientific mind can understand, if that makes sense. So why I love trance healing in particular. So there's all different kinds of healing modalities, which all have whatever merit that they have based on the evidence that they have given. I've known, having worked in this stuff for 13 years, I've seen all kinds of different healing modalities. There's Reiki, obviously, that's probably the most popular one. Reiki, theta healing, pranic healing. What are some other ones? Reconnective healing. I mean, there's all kinds of healing modalities. There's just a bunch of them. What you don't see that often is trance healers. Now, trance healers are people who have developed their trance ability to allow one of their guides, a healing guide normally, to be able to speak through them oftentimes, but not always. Others will just put their hands on a person, or sometimes not even put their hands on a person, but they're allowing a guide to work through them. By letting this guide work through them, they're able to bring forward spiritual healing energy that, in my experience, has been the most evidential. Some of them, I used to know a healer who was quite evidential, in my opinion, knowing, people who had 14 years of pain, and they go and they work with him for, 15 minutes, maybe less, and that 14 years of pain is gone, and then seeing them 6 months later and still no pain. And he worked with, a healing guide of his. That was probably one of the most, personally that I have seen, one of the most evidential, forms of trance healing. He didn't go into trance like full body or speaking or anything like that. He just let them overshadow him, which was quite amazing, to be honest. And so that's just one example of what I have seen personally. One of my really good friends, Roy Stemmen, hey Melinda, he is an author of multiple books. He's been studying, researching. He's more of a researcher of spiritualism, mediumship, psychic phenomena. He was the editor of the Psychic News in England, if any of you have ever read that. Fabulous, very, very knowledgeable man. Knew Maurice Barbanel, who was the medium for Silver Birch, if you're familiar with that. So, very, very knowledgeable man. He wrote a book about one of the most evidential mediums of our time as far as trance healing goes, at least, within Europe and all of that. And it was a gentleman by the name of George Chapman. He began his development after losing a daughter, and he basically was using a overturned shot glass and some letters at the fire department that he worked at when there was no fires, and they would just sit around and get messages. Well, a spirit person began speaking to him regularly through there. Eventually he started moving into these trance states, and then it was said that they were going to do great work together within the healing capacity to help the world. And what was particularly amazing about George Chapman was that he was able to go into the deepest levels of trance. So he was totally unconscious, which is a rare thing to see anyway. And he was able to bring forward this doctor that had died, I think, something like 60 years before him, and be able to work with him. Now, the most fascinating thing is, yes, he had a lot of success stories. He never claimed that he could, but that they would do their best. So if someone came in with a problem, they would say that Dr. Chapman would say, Dr. Lang, that's the spirit person who came through him. Sorry, his name was Dr. Lang. George Chapman is the medium, just to be clear about that. Dr. Lang would say, we're going to do our best. They never promised a healing, but they did their best. And they had a lot of success. I mean, removing of cataracts, cancers, tumors, all kinds of things. And these were all just done energetic. Dr. Lang would say that they would work on the etheric body, and then that would eventually work its way to the physical body. Because oftentimes illness, Dr. Lang said, doesn't start with just the physical. It starts in the emotional body, it starts in the mental body, it starts in the energetic body. So it's all of the makeup that eventually works its way to the physical. And so by working on the energetic body, we can then work on the physical as well. And so that's what he would do. And the amazing thing, particularly about this instance of trance mediumship, was George Chapman brought through this doctor, Dr. Lang, and could bring forward accurate information about this man's life. So accurate, in fact, that Dr. Lang's daughter eventually found out as he started to get fame that there was someone claiming that her father had returned in the form of a spirit coming through a medium. And so she met with George Chapman, and had a sitting with Dr. Lang coming through George Chapman. And by the end of that sitting, she was convinced that this was really her father. She asked personal questions that only he and her would know. He knew the answers without any problem. He called her by, her name that he knew her as. He just gave all kinds of evidence. And so they actually developed a pact that it wouldn't be revealed that she was, giving her thumbs up on him until after she passed, because she didn't want the fame and the people, knocking on her door for interviews and all that stuff, which makes sense. But they also had a pact that they had to meet every 2 weeks or 1 week or something like that. Maybe I think eventually it turns into once a month, with her and then several other doctors who still lived, who knew Dr. Lang, so that they could ask him questions, he could help them with, medical patients that they had, etc., etc. So that happened for 30 plus years, and then once she passed, she left a lot of her property and money and things to George Chapman. George Chapman is passed now, but he's one of the most remarkable forms of healers, trance healers, because of this fact that he could show not only that healing was possible, because obviously there are healers who don't work in the trance state and have really positive results, but also that consciousness still exists beyond the grave. And I think that was the important part of what it was that George Chapman was doing. How much more evidential can you get when you're literally, the spirit person is speaking directly to people who were colleagues, who was the child of this man, and could give all kinds of evidence and reality. So that's one of my favorite things. If you're interested in learning more about that, there is an exceptional book. Well, I guess it's backwards for you guys, but I'll read you what it says. Surgeon from Another World, George Chapman. It's his, I believe, autobiography. And then Roy Stemmen is also on this as well, which is fabulous. So I have found in my experience that the trance healers are quite amazing. Now, there are other healers. There are healers who just use energy and the power to heal. Harry Edwards was one of those. He is one of the most famous healers in spiritualism, and he was a contemporary of George Chapman. And they, had their own sort of disagreements as to whether trance was actually needed to have exceptional healing abilities, which I don't necessarily know that it does. I think that is something that can just happen, through bringing the power and bringing that universal energy. But in my experience, what I've seen, trance healers have always been quite exceptional. If only in that they bring forward the evidence from the other world as well, which I think is amazing. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else important I want to say about trance healing. I don't think so. Any questions that anyone has, feel free to ask, because really just wanted to touch on trance healing today. And while you guys are thinking of questions, just to let you know, part of the reason I'm even mentioning trance healing today is because we'll be starting to have a group that meets weekly for the development of trance healing. So working with your healing guide and developing that relationships, and hope that if there is that potential within you for the development of healing, that we will hopefully be able to bring that forward. Obviously, with every kind of mediumship, it takes time, it takes patience, and consistency of effort, basically. Giving them the time. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that with all forms of mediumship. It just takes developing the power, sitting in the power, and learning how the power impacts you. That's probably the most important thing. That's how we have the amazing mediums of the past, which could, do all forms of mediumship. So my recommendation for anyone interested in developing trance healing is sitting in the power, obviously, but also offering to the other world the possibility and saying, if there's any potential here, can you help to unfold it? And then just wait and just be in that stillness, be in that power, and then just be open to whatever is going to develop with you, because it's going to be different for everyone. But I love healing. I love trance healing because it creates such a loving energy, because when we're sending healing, it's so much not about us. It is so completely about handing it over to the other world and just allowing whatever needs to happen, whatever needs to pass through, can help this person that's in front of you. It's very selfless. It's all about the other person. But what actually ends up happening is the more that we send this trance healing and energy, the more that we send this healing energy, we're actually developing our power. We're actually healing ourselves as well because of this power. And so also, the benefits of the trance part of it is that you get to develop the relationship with this healing guide, which will only deepen your connection and awareness of your spiritual nature. So just some things to think about. If there isn't any questions, I'll leave that there. But I think what I might do is try to put together an interview with Roy, because he has far more experience than I do with trance healing, with healers in general. He worked with the Psychic News for so many years, and I think what I'll do is try to see if he and I can do a distance interview thing and talk to him about that, because I think it would be very fascinating to hear the first-hand accounts, because he has many. He himself, being healed by trance healing. So, and as well with George Chapman, which was in Dr. Lang, which is pretty amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to do a brief little video about trance healing and healing in general. If you have any other questions about it, feel free to message me and let me know. If there's any questions or topics you want me to cover at a different time, feel free to let me know. And I very much appreciate you tuning in and checking it out. And I look forward to hopefully speaking to you all again soon. Hello, Karen. I see you just popped in there. Hi, Melinda. Hi, all the people that are watching. I think I have 6 people right now watching, which I appreciate, every one of you. If there's no other questions, I'll give you just a minute more, and then if there's any questions about anything related to any sort of spiritual thing, I'm happy to explore and answer. Thanks for the love. Y'all are sweet. A couple other books that I'm reading right now. This one is Maurice Barbanel's book. This is Spiritualism, which I really am enjoying, actually. I'm flying through this book. I think I just started it the other day, and I think I'm almost halfway through, which has been fabulous and very interesting, and getting to read a lot about the mediumship of Estelle Roberts, which is someone to definitely look into, because she had all the gifts of the spirit, and it was quite fabulous and amazing. So very, very interesting. Another Roy Stemmen book, The Big Book of Reincarnation, which is very fabulous and interesting to watch, so I highly recommend that. A very, very good book. I think also the other reason why I really connect with Roy is that he's evidence-based. He's a researcher, so that's the thing he's looking for. He's looking for the things that can't be explained in other ways. And I really appreciate that, because I think within any kind of mediumship or psychic investigation or anything like that, we should always come in with an open mind, but also with a little bit of a skepticism, because unfortunately there are a lot of frauds out there. Hey, Devin, and we want to make sure that the quality is what it needs to be. And I think by allowing a little bit too much anything goes aspect to our psychic work or mediumship, we kind of sell ourselves short to the potential of what could be. There's really no reason why we can't have the level of mediumship or psychic awareness that we enjoyed, prior to, World War I, World War II. So, which is incredible. So, anyway, I guess if there's no questions, I will leave that there. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll be doing this again next week. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to send them to me. Any topics you want me to cover, I'm happy to do that. So we will be doing the trance healing workshops will be on Thursdays at Awakenings 10 to 12. So if you can make it, it's definitely worth it. It's going to feel good. It's going to feel amazing because trance already has a feel-good factor, and then you combine that with the fact that you're sending healing only makes it better. So I highly recommend that you check that out and that you come to that if you can. That's at Awakenings Bookstore in Laguna Hills, California. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a beautiful and amazing day. And take care.